Many have recognized that our current economic system seems to be predicated on infinite economic growth.
And its critics on infinite stupidity.
At the same time, it has become evident that humanity has reached a kind of ecological overshoot.
And how do you come to that other than Malthusian garbage?
Mass extinctions,
Because those have never happened before.
pollution,
Never heard of the Kuznets curve either.
and overpopulation.
Long debunked crap. There's never been any truth to the claims about the planet being overpopulated.
Destroying the biosphere of the Earth in irreversible ways.
Plagues of locusts, Dracula riding Godzilla, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
Environmentalists have hoped to reform the economic system into a green version of capitalism that can maintain economic development for a planet of more than 10 billion people,
While actually passing policies that can't even sustain 4.
while reversing the trend of ecological destruction.
Again, anyone who understands the Kuznets curve knows how ridiculous that is.
Meanwhile, many on the right decry the modern obsession with endless growth, the cult of GDP, and over-focus on economism,
Maybe someday you'll let us know what those terms are supposed to mean.
while at the same time defending capitalism as an economic system.
He goes on like this for a while. I'm just gonna skip until he actually makes a claim.
First of all, the tendency to equate capitalism with the existence of markets is incorrect. Markets pre-existed capitalism.
This is true, but the markets weren't always voluntary. Capitalism is about voluntary markets. Anyone want to bet he's really using this to deny it's about voluntary markets at all?
What separates capitalism from previous economic forms is the dominance of an investor class.
Could have made money on that one.
A financial elite controls a surplus of capital, which it reinvests to return a profit.
And what exactly is a financial elite? Because according to your definition, it's anyone with a savings account.
Capitalism, as an ism, is quite simply the dominance of capital.
That's an etymology, not a definition.
While capital is the process of money creating value perpetually.
Money does not create value. No capitalist claims it does. In fact, we absolutely deny that idea because it means that printing money would create value instead of destroying it through inflation. Got any other pathetic strawman you want to sling around?
The only way to generate enough surplus for investor returns is to generate more profit each year than the year before.
Again, all you're doing is restating the claim. It's a bit like saying people drive a car because they want the car to be driven. What they actually want is a positive return on their investments, and they do that by creating wealth for their customers. Which is another debunking of your insane claim that money is wealth. How could someone gain by giving up money? Because money isn't wealth. It's a medium of exchange and a store of value. Both the customer and the company increase their wealth with every purchase, because the customer values the product or service more than he values the money he pays for it, and the company values the money more than they value the costs of producing the product or service. And if that weren't the case, no transaction would ever take place. This is the very basis of a free market economy. One day you morons are gonna learn that.
This is why when investors assess the health of a firm, they don't assess net profits. Instead, they look at the rate of profit. In other words, how much the firm's profits grow each year.
No. The profit rate is the ratio of the profit to overall revenues minus the cost of goods. It has nothing to do with what happened the previous year. Think about it for 2 seconds. If this were the case, how would you determine the firm's rate of profit its first year in existence? You couldn't. Which means you couldn't determine it the next year because you wouldn't have the first year to compare it to. Or the year after that. Or the year after that. And this is the entire basis of his stupid position.
Investors must engage in this endless quest for growth because when capital sits still, it loses value due to factors like inflation and depreciation.
That doesn't happen because capital sits still, idiot. Inflation happens because government prints money. Depreciation happens because something gets consumed or perishes. A bar of gold, for example, will do neither, which is why it's historically been one of the most prominent methods of reserves in the world.
And as capital piles up in the hands of investors,
what does this even mean? How does capital pile up? Capital is how you drive production. It's what enables you to use labor to turn resources into a final product. Do you not even know what capital is?
this coercive law of competition.
Oh, it's a law? Then show us the equation.
If business owners do not expand and outcompete their competitors, they will eventually be expanded over and outcompeted until they go out of business.
Tell that to a lot of English pubs and taverns that have existed for 1,000 years. Or just answer this question. What mechanism is there for a firm of a particular size with a steady income to be driven out of business? The answer is nothing! Not in a free market anyway.
We are facing a sort of relative decline vis-a-vis China.
Well, yeah, because they've recently been opening up their economy after decades of communist ruin. It's easy to grow when you're at the bottom.
Global poverty has gone down a lot.
Yeah, and that's interesting, isn't it? Why would global poverty be going down if there are more people? Do you not see how that debunks the very basis of your assertion?
But when you have a country of 1.2 billion people, it's 4 times our population, if they get to half of our per capita wealth, they become a much stronger economy than we are.
And that means what exactly?
And so we should do something about that.
Why? Why would you think another economy being stronger would be a problem for us? Oh, wait, let me guess. Your economic understanding doesn't even reach the level of David Ricardo, does it?
I think Americans, want to be the world's #1 power. We don't want to be number 2 to China.
Who would really care about this other than a complete narcissist or nationalist cultist? This sounds like confession through projection to me.
To see how immigration adversely affects the American environment in a number of ways.
Let's not. It was debunked on this channel long ago.
An even bigger reason for the unavoidable tendency toward infinite growth in a capitalist society is simply that the state becomes a tool of capital.
No, in a capitalist society, you specifically don't use a state, because capitalism is voluntary and the state is aggressive. What you're talking about is a mercantilist society which capitalism was specifically developed to eliminate.
Capitalism was created when a wealthy investor elite began to control the direction of the economy.
No, that had been the case for centuries. Capitalism was created when individual property rights became a thing. The right to own not only a home, but a place of business as well. Capitalism is what destroyed the traditional elites. For the first time ever, wealth didn't have to be inherited. You could start from nothing and become a success on your own merits. I have video after video after video showing this.
Hence, the elites of modern capitalist countries are not military or religious, but financial elites who generally lack political loyalty to anything beyond their financial interests.
That's your problem? They lack political loyalty? You have problems I can't fix, man.
Being capitalist, the most powerful actors in society will always use the state to maximize growth for their own gain.
Again, that means you don't have capitalism.
Even public spending programs ostensibly in favor of sustainability, such as investment in renewable energy.
Yeah, you knew this was gonna be a thing with him. Guy probably thinks nuclear power means building bombs or something.
And finally, there is the problem of debt. Under capitalism, money is loaned into existence as interest-bearing debt, and in order to pay back the debt plus the interest, an expansion of the monetary supply is necessary.
Oh, for the love of Mike. Fine. Here we go again. Debt is just the other side of the investment transaction. Investment means delayed gratification. You aren't consuming today in exchange for greater returns in the future. On the other side of it, borrowing means you don't have to wait to accumulate a fortune, which is impossible for most people otherwise, to start up a business. The ability of the common folk to have the benefit of credit is exactly what let them start creating wealth for themselves. Without it, they'd still be struggling to eke out an existence as farmers. When they're successful in making money, they can pay back the loan with interest. That is where the growth comes from. Increased economic activity where we go from mere subsistence and starvation to a world of plenty. What you're calling infinite growth just means that this process keeps on going indefinitely. But you don't need to expand the money supply to do it. In fact, that just gets in the way of things, because the new money isn't tied to delayed gratification. Someone tries to make a business, and someone else tries to consume. Since no consumption is deferred, they both grab for the same resources. This is where the bubbles and the crashes come from. And by the way, monetary expansion and central banking is not capitalism. In fact, it's actually socialism. It's one of the planks in Marx and Engels' Communist Manifesto.
Trillions of dollars of debt has been taken on in recent decades, so more than ever, the system needs growth for stability.
That's government doing that, not capitalism. Because they're running unsustainable policies like Social Security and continuing their tax and spend habits.
Otherwise, debts stop being repaid and the system collapses, something we almost saw in 2008.
Are you serious? So you don't have the first clue what caused the 2008 financial crisis either?
As the limits to infinite growth on a planet of finite resources becomes evident,
only to a moron like you who doesn't know what it is, it just means that we learn more about how to go about doing things. As people innovate, as people create businesses, they generate more wealth for themselves and their customers. You keep thinking that this means that the capital that was spent 200 years ago is in some mysterious landfill somewhere piling up. No. Capitalism is all about how you manage scarce resources. And increasing capital and growth in the economy just means you get better at doing that. How would you even begin to explain the fact that we didn't starve when 90% of us stopped being farmers? That we ended up with even more food? And also all sorts of products that didn't even exist 200 years ago?
For the reasons I've outlined here, it is clear that capitalism as an economic system not only generates, but is predicated on the perpetual generation of economic growth.
No, it's just clear that you're a moron. So thanks for watching. Please hit like and subscribe, leave a comment, and go to donate.bogosity.tv to keep me doing what I do. And check out all the great content here, like this video selected just for you.